Welcome back to Unit 4. In this lesson, we'll be talking about the Huntington-Hill method of apportionment. After going through a number of apportionment methods, you might be wondering, how do we apportion seats of the House of Representatives today? We actually use the Huntington-Hill method, which is also known as the method of equal proportions. In 1941, Congress passed a law that established that the House will have a fixed size of 435 seats. They also established that a permanent method of apportionment needed to be used, so that apportionment was not political, but instead purely mathematical. The Huntington-Hill method does use a modified divisor in place of the standard divisor, but the rounding method is much different. It's not conventional, and it's not upper and lower quotas. Rather, the Huntington-Hill rounding rule uses the geometric mean of the upper and lower quotas. If you're not familiar with the geometric mean, I'll review it here. Suppose we have two numbers, just A and B, and we want to find the geometric mean. We can accomplish that by finding the square root of A times B, the square root of their product. For the Huntington-Hill rounding rule, given a quota Q, the cutoff for rounding is given by the square root of the lower quota times the upper quota. And we notate that using the letter C, because if the given quota is less than C, we're going to round down. If the quota is greater than C, we're going to round up. C is our cutoff value. This is similar to conventional rounding, but with conventional rounding, we round up whenever the decimal portion is 0.5 or greater. But with this method, the cutoff value will be a little different for determining when to round up and when to round down. Let's take a look at our class example to practice this. In our class example, we have the following standard quotas. And the standard quotas add up to exactly 250. Let's look at each state one at a time to learn how to use Huntington-Hill rounding. State A has a standard quota of 32.92. This means that their lower quota is 32. And their upper quota is 33. The cutoff value will determine whether or not State A is given 32 or 33 seats. To calculate the cutoff value, we need to do C equal to the square root of 32 times 33. This gives us a cutoff point of 32.496. Comparing the standard quota to the cutoff point, we see that we want to round this standard quota up. Since the quota is greater than the cutoff, we round up. Let's try this again for State B. State B has a lower quota of 138 and an upper quota of 139. The cutoff point for State B is C equal to the square root of 138 times 139. This gives us 138.50. Since State B's standard quota is larger than the cutoff value, we will round up to 139. Let's keep going for each state. For each state, we need to decide to round up or down based on the comparison of the standard quota to the cutoff value. State C is lower than the cutoff value, so we'll round down. For State D, the quota is higher than the cutoff value, so we round up. State E, the quota is higher than the cutoff value, so we round up. And for State F, the quota is larger than the cutoff value, so we again round up. This gives us a total of 251 seats. So unfortunately, we are slightly too high. Since we're just barely too high and we need to bring it down by just a little, let's try a modified divisor, D equal to 50,100. Now we need to take each state's population and divide it by 50,100. This will give us our modified quotas. Now for each one, let's calculate the cutoff value. For State A, the cutoff value will be the square root of 32 times 33. That's the same value we had before of 32.496. The reason we have the same cutoff value is because both the standard and modified quotas are between 32 and 33. We have the same situation with State B. Our quota is still between 138 and 139, So our cutoff value is still 138.50. State C, we're still between 3 and 4, so the cutoff is still 3.464, and we can finish in the same way. Now let's compare each modified quota with the cutoff values to see which ones need to round up and which ones will round down. State A will round up to 33, but look at State B. The standard quota was 138.72. That was above the cutoff value, so we rounded up. But our modified quota is only 138.44, so now we round down to 138. State C will still round down, D will round up, State E will round up, and State F will round up. So the only change was with State B, which brings us down exactly 1 seat to 250 exactly. And now we've successfully used the Huntington-Hill method of apportionment for our class example. The Huntington-Hill method is still what we use today. However, it's still not perfect. Just recently in 1990, Montana was going to lose a seat. Montana filed a lawsuit called Montana versus the United States Department of Commerce, in which it argued that the Huntington-Hill method was unconstitutional. Federal judges ruled 2-1 in favor of Montana, but the Supreme Court overturned the ruling and upheld the Huntington-Hill method. So this method is still what we use today.